The National Trust for Historic Preservation notes, for any organization, creating a social media following involves building brand awareness and directing followers into your membership or donor pipeline. But individuals and smaller organizations can use social media platforms more broadly to advocate for saving places, end quote. And I'd say social media can also really help accomplish your mission, right? It can be a key component of accomplishing your mission, particularly in these crazy times where we're not bringing people out to our site. So I think this conversation is more timely and more important than ever. That's why we have Tara here today. Yay, Tara. As I said, she's an archivist, but she also happens to serve as a social media manager for several organizations, as you will see in a moment. She's actually fresh off social media's Ask an Archivist Day, which, if you are not aware, was yesterday. So Tara, we were chatting a little bit about that earlier. I hope that went well. Let's start with you telling us a little bit about your professional background.
Sure. So hi, everyone. As Melissa mentioned, I'm Tara Maharjan. I'm the processing archivist for Special Collections University Archives at Rutgers University Libraries. I hold master's degrees from Simmons College in history and in library science with a concentration in archiving. I'm also the current New Jersey Caucus Chair for MARAC, the Mid-Atlantic Regional Archivist Conference. I am the webmaster and social media person for the New Jersey Studies Academic Alliance, and I'm involved with SADA, which is the South Asian American Digital Archive. Prior to Rutgers, I was a cataloger for the book scanning division of the Internet Archive at Princeton and the cookbook librarian for America's Test Kitchen. So I've held a variety of positions and things within the field.
I did not know that about you. Now, I know Tara, but I did not know this cookbook. We'll have to talk more about that later. Your time is
yes.
So you mentioned running the website and social media for the New Jersey Studies Academic Alliance. Any other organizations? Do you have a hand in Rutgers Special Collections social media as well?
Yes. So while my job title is processing archivist, I also manage the social media for Special Collections, which kind of comes in the other duties, which is something that I also asked to do. When I started at Special Collections University Archives in 2015, we had a Facebook page that no one maintained, and that thus no one knew that it existed. So at that point, I took over the Facebook, and we started an Instagram and Twitter accounts. So that we could start to highlight the weird and wonderful things that we have in our collections that people don't necessarily know about or don't necessarily make it into exhibits, because we have so many treasures, as I'm sure all of you do in your properties, that people just don't know about, and that's one of the great things. I also started the Instagram for the Princeton, the Internet Archive, the book scanning division in Princeton, which is now merged into the main account of the Internet Archive. So if you scroll really far down, you'll find my old posts from the Internet Archive as well.
So you mentioned, right, you obviously have your hand in a lot of different social media accounts, and that you actually asked for this, right, to be one of the many hats that you are wearing. Do you have any professional training, though, in social media operations or marketing?
No. My undergraduate degrees were in film studies and history, and then I went on to library school and got a master's in history. So I have no background in this. Everything has been trial and error, which I think is the biggest part of social media, is everyone kind of needs to figure out what's going to work for them. I did search for some tools, which I'll share with you guys today. And I think the biggest thing is also just kind of finding a network of other social media coordinators that can help, create some kind of social media plans, which we can talk about later. And so it's all kind of been a trial and error. The biggest thing is that I just am a person who will walk around with my phone and take pictures of anything that catches my eye. So if the light's reflecting nicely on something, I'll take a picture. If we have a donor who stops by and takes a tour, I'll ask them for permission to get a picture as they're walking through. Sometimes the books just look nice on the shelves. Sometimes my office is a complete mess because I'm in the middle of a project. And I think people need to understand that the work that we do is not always neat and tidy and beautiful boxes on the shelves, or even something as silly as one of my student workers doing something out of the norm, like hanging a TV. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to share my screen for a sec. I'll just show you guys a few. So literally, these are just pictures that I've snapped from around special collections just because I was walking nearby and I've put them on our social media. So this is just a casual shelf that I was walking by and I was like, oh, all of these books just look really nice. Here, as I said, was my office as a complete mess while I was processing. And literally, I did have a student one day help us hang a TV in our gallery space. And so just quickly snapped a photo of her doing this. So you just kind of never know where that inspiration is going to come from. And everything is going to be more of a trial and error. And everyone just needs to figure out what's going to work for them.
I think these are such important points, right? Because a lot of us do not have the budget to be hiring a marketing company to handle all our social media or a photographer to come out. Yeah, you might be lucky and get the local photographer to come out for a ribbon cutting ceremony or something like that. But general day-to-day operations, most of us are not going to be able to afford that, but we don't have to. We can create interesting content that engages our communities on our own, right? And that's really powerful and something that we need to tap into and take advantage of. You mentioned some good resources to kind of school people on social media best practices. I know one book I love is Marketing and Social Media by Christine Kuntz. The subtitle is A Guide for Libraries, Archives, and Museums. I'll type it in the chat box if anyone is interested. But Tara, please share with us some places that you find tips and inspiration about how to create the good content, but then how to engage with people. Because if you're just putting it up there and no one notices, then it's futile. It's not the good productive use of your time. Yeah. You've got to do both. Get the content and then get the engagement.
So getting the content is one thing, but then, you know, it's so important with social media to also continue to be engaged. Like when I started at Special Collections and we had a Facebook page and no one was using it, it didn't matter that we had the Facebook page. It just, there was nothing there. So having a consistent amount of content that is going online, and I'm not saying that you need to do a new post every day, but having some consistency where maybe you are getting at least one post out a week is always good. So I feel like having tools to schedule these things in advance also helps so much, because I don't always have time to create a new post every day. So, but I do have a few minutes here and there that I can schedule posts to automatically go. So some of my favorite tools have been using websites like later.com or Hootsuite, which is another popular one, which allows me to upload images, have a stockpile, so I can continue to create content over time. As I mentioned, so I'll put both the websites into
I'll put it in the chat. Yeah, don't worry about it. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, perfect. I was going to say, there's later.com and Hootsuite, which kind of, they went together in a weird way. So at Special Collections, we use later.com because it does allow me to upload images that I can then come back to later. And to be honest, I'm a bit lazy when it comes to social media. So what I usually do is I'll create content for all three platforms. And so I see the question in the chat. Hootsuite and Later will allow you to create content for all social media platforms. So the Instagram, the Twitter, or Facebook. And because I'm lazy, I will create one post that will get shared across all three platforms, which is also fine. It allows me to schedule them to be posted automatically. So I honestly, after creating the post don't need to do much work with those, but you will need to go back and engage in some ways. So we'll talk about that in a sec. There are some limitations with the free versions of Later and Hootsuite, which allows you to only publish one image at a time. Whereas if you were using the Instagram app, for instance, or the Facebook app, you could select multiple images to post together. So there are some limitations with using the free version. There is a paid version, but I will never be able to get a budget to do social media. As I mentioned, the whole process is not automated. You still need to check your social media sites to engage with people. So whether that's liking other people's content, whether that's answering questions that you may get on your posts, it may be asking other people questions. Because of the algorithm that all of the social media platforms have, the more that you engage and the more that people engage with you, the more people who get to see your content. And so that becomes an important point to make sure that you aren't just putting things out there, that you are making sure to continue to engage. If you're only using Facebook or Facebook and Instagram, since Facebook owns Instagram, Facebook has its own scheduling within itself called Facebook Creative Studio. And this is what I use for the New Jersey Studies Academic Alliance, because we aren't very active on Twitter. A lot of our content is solely on Facebook. And so what I will do is I'll use just the posting through Facebook's management, and that will allow me to create posts all at the same time. So I don't forget to advertise when we have an award deadline coming up or when we have a meeting. I just sit down once and create multiple at different times and on different days so that people continue to see the information. Twitter also has its own scheduling tool built in, but that is only for sending posts on Twitter. So I like Later and Hootsuite because I can schedule things for all three at the same time.
Yeah, you have a limited amount of time to dedicate to this.
Exactly. It's something that you can do very quickly within, as if you have the photos, it's so much easier just to spend a few moments and be like, oh, let me write something up and have it ready to post. And you don't need to think about, oh, have I posted something lately? What am I going to do today? Having that stockpile is always really nice.
So you've mentioned a bunch of different social media platforms. Do you think it's important that organizations harness them all? So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, there are even others like TikTok and stuff. Facebook is obviously the biggest with 2.4 billion users. I looked it up. But which ones do you think it's important to be on? Are they targeting different audiences? Talk to us about that a little bit. I feel like Facebook is probably the easiest one for organizations to go to, but should they push themselves to join the others as well?
So I think that you kind of need to know your audience and need to know what you want to use it for. Facebook is so versatile because you can easily post text or images or videos from your computer or your phone. The other thing is that if you have a team of people, a team of volunteers who are managing your social media, you can have multiple people manage the page, even with different levels of administrative privileges. And that allows people to use their own login information. So you're not giving your username or password to an intern who may be gone in 3 months. It links to their Facebook page and allows them to log in, and then you can take away their administrative privileges when their time with you is done. And so you can give these various levels of administrative privileges will be something where you can post absolutely everything, or it can be just this person has access to check comments. So there's a wide variety of things you can look at. Instagram,
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say Instagram itself is a primarily visual platform, and it's mainly an app to use from your phone. You can post pictures and then write captions with hashtags as a way, that's something that's on your phone. People can view it on the computer and they can comment, but you can't post from it, from the Instagram's website. There are also some other limitations, like if you're adding a URL to your caption, people cannot click on it. So there are a few tricks to kind of get around how to deal with that. But if your main use of Instagram is going to be to share your events and you want people to register for them, that may not be the easiest way to do it. And then Twitter is like a short text-based platform where you can include photos or videos, but you have only 280 characters total, including if you're adding a link that counts towards your characters. So you have some kind of limitations there, but it is easy for people to share your content after it's out there. So, I mean, there are distinct pros and cons with each platform.
To those of you who are writing in the chat, I'm going to circle back to those in just a couple minutes. I just want to get through a few more questions with Tara, and then we'll move into our Q&A portion, I promise. One thing you just mentioned was allowing, say, volunteers or interns admin privileges. And I think it's worth we just pause for a second and note that you should be really careful who you allow to access your social media page, because there have been some extremely public kerfluffles, for lack of a better word, where a page likes or shares content that is inflammatory, or they post something that is inflammatory. And even if it is an intern or volunteer, it's going to reflect on your group or your organization, just as if a paid employee or the president of the trustees did it. So any comments on cautionary tales in the social media world?
I think just knowing who has access, and I think that's also where some of the nice things with scheduling things in advance is nice, because you can ask a student to write these things and they don't need to have access to your username and password. And so the one thing I like about the Facebook one is that it's easy to take away people's privileges. If they're no longer with the organization, you can easily change how much you'll allow them to do. And I'll create a handout that Emily can send out to everyone afterwards with all of the links, and just to explain how some of these things work a little bit further, so that people can, understand that. Whereas with Instagram, like if you want a student or a volunteer to be the person to create content on the spot, they need to be logged in to their phone with your username and password. And so you would need to make sure they log out when they're done, and make sure, or you need to change your password. And so there's also just some logistical things that maybe it's easier to have things scheduled in advance.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Speaking of who's posting what when, do you follow a set social media or marketing plan? If so, what does it include?
So I kind of post things on a specific day based on hashtags. So hashtags are a way for liked topics to kind of come together. So if I use a particular hashtag and Melissa uses a particular hashtag, we'll be able to see each other's content even if we don't follow each other. So it's a nice way to have other people learn about your content. So for instance, on Mondays, maybe I'll post a hashtag Map Monday, or a Marbled Monday, or a Manuscript Monday. And the libraries of Instagram, there's kind of this community of people who have created a full list of hashtag ideas. And I will put that in the chat right now. There's a huge list. They come up with various challenges of things for people to put out, just to kind of different themes. So sometimes they've had like an outer space theme or a handwriting theme. And so it kind of helps you think about other ideas for content. So, for historic preservation, maybe you use hashtag New Jersey Historic Homes. or even something like hashtag old house love or something like that, where you're going to get other people who are using those hashtags to come together. And, you know, I think one of the great things about having Preservation New Jersey and them putting together these series is that you have the opportunity also to meet other people who are doing social media. And you can follow their accounts and they can follow your accounts, and you guys can interact to kind of create your own community of social media. And that's also great. The other thing that I found that does really well on social media is the behind the scenes photos. So people working on an exhibit, or if we have a class visiting, or photos from an event, those always do really well. So something like my student hanging the TV was kind of a funny thing that most people wouldn't see otherwise. I would just make a point to say, make sure you have people's permissions if you're going to show faces. If you're just showing a large crowd, it's a little bit different, but if you're taking a still shot of someone who's doing something very particular, just make sure that you have their permission to post it online.
I would say be particularly cautious with children too.
Yes.
Like field trips, not now, obviously, but someday when we can hopefully do that again.
Yeah.
Cautious about children and permissions.
What I've usually done with that is to take pictures over their shoulder so you can see that it's a person looking at something, but there's no identifying features.
Oh, great tip. Great tip. You mentioned hashtags, and we were kind of in that vein, but I'll just call it out specifically, like tagging other organizations too, right? Yes. So, you know, when Tara is posting for the New Jersey Studies Academic Alliance, if she tags me running the Monmouth University Department of History and Anthropology page and the New Jersey Studies Journal page, well, now I see her post, I can share her post with my audience and we can help each other gain traction that way. So certainly in all of your posts, you know, be tagging Preservation New Jersey, be tagging other organizations that you know have similar goals so that you can benefit from each other's audiences, because, you know, with that many billion users, you want to reach as many people as possible.
And if I can jump on that too, yeah. The other thing is just making connections within your community. So knowing the people who are in the township. So knowing that you're maybe even like the local Rotary Club or something, if they, you know, tagging them or seeing if they'll share some of your content to their people, because it's always about getting that information out. So it's about, so much of it is about just building networks and finding other people to kind of add, so that they see your content and then they share it with their people, and it keeps kind of rolling from there.
Rotary Club, Chamber of Commerce, Town Council, things like that.
Even asking your trustees if they're on these social media sites to share the information as well, to kind of promote the events. That also is just a huge help, because now they're sharing it with their friends. This
is a quick question. I said I wasn't going to address the questions in the chat, but this is a quick one I can knock out of the way. Does everyone like to be tagged? I've had feedback that some don't. People can set their permissions so that they, one, can disallow anyone from tagging them, or that they have to approve a tag, which has nothing to do on your end. It would pop up on their end. Or that they have their tags open. So if somebody is against being tagged, they should have that kind of in their permissions as something they don't allow people to do. Tara, would you have a comment on that?
I think that, you know, part of it's also just, I mean, you can always reach out to the organization through a message to say, hey, we're having this event, would you mind sharing, or is it okay if I tag you? If there are people who you don't necessarily know, I think, you know, tagging Preservation New Jersey is a great way for them to be easily know about your events and to reshare. And I think that is one, you know, organization that you probably don't need to ask as much. But maybe, yeah, before you tag 20 local things, maybe you reach out to them and say, hey, like, are these things that you're willing to share, and will you be willing to share them in the future, so that you kind of know what people are willing to help you with.
And just one thing I want to just jump in. So like, I run the social media for Preservation New Jersey, and like, we're always like, well, I'm always looking for stuff, like what can we share, like articles, pictures, and people email it to us or tag it. It's like, it's helpful actually. It's not like, oh my gosh, they tag, in the Historic Trust, you tag them. They're very good at retweeting, sharing. PNJ Historical Commission, I've noticed, we all share a lot of the same things. So just, yeah, I think it's actually helpful sometimes. If if somebody wants to be tagged, it's actually, you're helping them find content that's relevant for their users.
So I'm going to take the question that's also in the chat because it kind of goes along with what we're saying. So the difference between hashtag and using the @ symbol. So the hashtag is the number sign above the 3, in case anyone is not sure what that means. That brings together like posts. So anyone who uses that hashtag, it shows up in one feed together. So if you are using hashtag NJ Historic Homes, and that means that anyone can use that hashtag. So someone who happens to own a historic home that may not be a museum may use that hashtag. Someone who's just on the street and sees an old historic home may be there. Yeah, it's like a keyword. And so anyone can use that. Whereas if you use the @ symbol, it will notify the person that you are using that @ sign for, that they have been tagged, and it makes them aware of it, and it allows other people to then visit their page if it's available. So that's the difference between the two.
While we're talking about tags and hashtags and trying to get your content in front of as many eyes as possible, let me ask, you mentioned earlier that you have virtually no budget. I know I have no budget for any of the 6 accounts that I manage, but what are your thoughts on paying for ads? If you did have money, do you think that's a productive use of your funds, or what are your thoughts on that?
I personally don't use ads. The algorithms for social media are just so tough anyway. I'm not saying that you can't, but I'd also think about, you can see what is a paid ad on your social media and how much are you paying attention to those things if it's not something you're interested in, or if it's not I personally often skip over the things where I'm like, I don't know what this is, and I just keep going. So I don't know if ads are necessarily worth it, personally.
So if you don't have money for ads, it shouldn't dissuade you. And if you do get money, just think long and hard about if there's perhaps a better use for it than paying for the ads.
Exactly. I think there's so many other things that the money could be used for.
Okay, very good. You kind of touched on this earlier, Tara, but as I was making notes for our conversation, I read this article on the Museum Next blog, and it said, social media is a conversation, not a broadcast. And I think it speaks a lot to, as you said earlier, the fact that you should be responding to people, engaging in literal conversations. But I think it also speaks to tone, right? Because the tone that we use on social media might be different than that we use in a brochure or an interpretive panel or Wayside, right? So can you talk to us a little bit about the best tone to be using on social media?
I think part of it's going to be knowing your audience. It's really one of those things that I know when I'm interacting with some of the other libraries, it can be something that's fun and, joking. So yes, you were mentioning earlier, I did Ask an Archivist Day yesterday, and I had someone ask me a question, and I responded back, and then they would send me back. I asked someone a question. I asked them, what was the favorite thing in their collection, and their response back was, well, we love all of our children equally. And it was like, this kind of not answer, and it's totally fine. Like that can be the thing that they do. And so it can be something that's fun and engaging, but when you also want to talk about an event, for instance, you want to make sure you're kind of getting to the point. You don't need a long drawn out thing. You don't necessarily, when you have your post, you don't necessarily need to give the person's whole biography and an explanation of the event and the details. You may just want to also kind of get to the point and say, hey, we're having this event. Like, here's the time, here's the thing. Find more information on our website or on our Facebook event or whatever. And so it's also making sure that you're staying within people's attention spans.
That's a good point. It's a vicious cycle, right? I think we have shorter attention spans because of social media, and so then we continue to post shorter and shorter content, which only continues to shrink our attention spans. But
Exactly.
a recent article on the American Alliance of Museums webpage notes, with the current COVID-19 pandemic deeply affecting museums across the world, many museum professionals at big and small museums alike are wondering how they can still connect and communicate with their audiences, each other, and the broader population. And for many, that is social media, end quote. So has this held true for you? Have you innovated any changes to your social media? I know for the Ocean County Historical Society, for example, we started a YouTube page and started doing brief videos, which we had never done before, but it was a way to continue our mission, telling the stories of Ocean County in a new virtual format. I mean, have you tried anything new?
So that's it. We've also kind of created some more videos for us. A big part of our mission in special collections is obviously instruction, and so we've created a lot of videos to explain who we are, what we do, and that's been really important. I think, for historic homes, you have to think about who you usually have visit. Do you usually have scout troops who are coming to visit the site to learn about the history? Maybe you create a video about that can be put up on a YouTube page that would be easy for people to access. So short videos are also super helpful, and those can easily be recorded on your smartphones as well. They don't need to be anything fancy. I think the biggest thing right now is that people are also just getting so creative about how to engage online. And it's so much easier to host virtual events like this one. And even if you don't have a Zoom account, you could also do something like using Facebook Live to host an event and have people interact that way. And it doesn't have to necessarily be immediately about your house. It doesn't have to be about something in particular. Do you have some beautiful flowers outside that come in the spring? Maybe you reach out to, a master gardening class to see if maybe they would come and talk about see if there's a master gardener who will come talk about your flowers, or, reach out to historians who may have topics that may relate to your house that maybe they'll be willing to come speak to you. And always having these conversations is great. To the organization who had the stained glass, this is a great way to create short videos about each of the stained glass pieces and have someone talk about them if you're able to get on site, so that people can continue to learn when they can't come visit. And hopefully then that will also encourage them to come see the stained glass in person.
I think that's been a fear of some. If we put too much content online, whether it's on social media or on our web pages, will people then not come in person, when they can? And I don't look at it that way, right? I think it's whetting their appetite, right? Getting them excited to actually come see you, to maybe make a donation to you, right? So I see it as really a positive all around. Let me see, Tara, any last thoughts on your end before we segue into what I hope is a robust conversation?
I think that just getting to know a community of people is helpful. And I think that's where Preservation New Jersey can also be a huge help to this group, is to also have you get in touch with other people. Maybe you do, depending on, the time period of your historic home, maybe there's another historic home who's willing to have a kind of conversation, and you both can talk about the things about your houses. Or, there's ways to team up also to make these things easier for all of us and to create more content, because there are plenty of students and people in the community who just don't know that these places exist. They'll drive past houses for years and never know what it's about. And so I think Melissa's right. Getting able to whet people's appetite to find out more always is a great way to get people engaged.
Awesome. All right, let's see if we can start by knocking out some of these questions in the chats. And then I'll open the floor for you to unmute yourselves and ask your own questions. Kathleen Carlucci was asking about posting on multiple sites, and I think you shared the Hootsuite and later.com tools, which are wonderful. Princeton United Methodist Church asks, I want to make a short series of videos on Zoom or on Facebook. I would also note, for anyone who hasn't thought of it, if you're very low tech, the videos I've made for the Ocean County Historical Society are simply voice recorded PowerPoints that I save in a video format. It could not be less threatening to use. So that's an easy way to create videos too. So this question continues, you make these short videos and then you want to post it on, this is the web page, but I think the question is, which platform supports videos best? Do you have an opinion on that?
Facebook very easily does it. YouTube, you can also, or YouTube is another free option for you if you want to create one platform that would have just videos. I didn't even talk about YouTube today. But that can be something that you can also have a series of videos, and then they're all in one place for people to find. And then once you have that link, you can continue to share it on your social media to remind people to look at your YouTube page or to link to a particular video over time. So that, I think would be the easiest way.
That's what I found. I like to post on YouTube so they live there and then share the link on Facebook. I found that very helpful. Kathleen Carlucci asks, if I am already following and or being followed on Instagram, isn't my post automatically seen by those groups and can be shared? That kind of depends on the algorithms, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
So that's the weird thing with social media is they've changed the algorithm. When Instagram started, you used to see every single post that came up. And over time, they've changed things that, no, people don't necessarily see your content. And if you're not active, it just completely disappears. Unfortunately, you can be putting out content every day and no one will see it. So that's why you need to continue to engage with people.
Yeah, Kathleen, they could go and actively look for you.
Mm-hmm.
They made a point to do it, but it won't necessarily show up in that feed that they're scrolling 20 or so times a day unless you maintain that active presence. So it is important to be posting regularly and to be interacting regularly. Princeton United Methodist said, I've been told that ads in general aren't useful, but what about just a mere $10 ad on Facebook to boost a specific event to attract a specific interest group? I mean, $10 investment, doesn't seem bad, right, Tara?
It doesn't seem bad. It just depends on how many times you want to do it and what kind of budget you have. If you're willing to do that, then that's great. And it can't hurt. But if you have a very limited budget, it may not be the best use of the money overall.
Princeton United Methodist Church shares, if you start simply on Facebook Live, that can morph into something more elegant. That happened for us. A Facebook Live rendition of the service, which was of poor quality, occurred, and then the quality improved. I think, and Princeton, please unmute yourself and speak up if you'd like, but I think their point is the videos can always be edited later if you need to add like an introduction or credits or something at the end. So yes. Kathleen Carlucci says, I would like to learn how to monetize some videos. Oh, wouldn't we all? I have no advice on that. Tara or Emily, monetize videos?
Yeah, I have no idea. I think a lot of it, I'm not even sure how we would monetize those.
My understanding is on YouTube, you have to have like 10,000 viewers or something to even begin to make any money off of it, if that's what Kathleen meant. Emily, would you add anything to that? Michelle has her hand raised too, so Emily and then Michelle.
I was just going to say that I know one of our previous Q&A speakers, Kathy Kelly, runs a tour company, and she's been doing, I think, in-person tours, but also virtual tours, I believe she talked about. And, she's able to charge for those virtual, tour experiences in her museum. She's down in Asbury Park with the, I think, I can't remember the exact name, but it's kind of ghost tours and things like that. So, it's possible you could charge for an experience that uses video and uses Zoom, if it was a really unique experience, exclusive, and you weren't going to post it online later, right, for free. So I think there is maybe some possibilities there. Michelle?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Michelle.
I'm on the board at Craftsman Farms, the Stickler Museum there, and they have been using a pay for classes method, and that's really sustained them over the the pandemic, but they charge $25 for a 1-hour class, and they do like a series of 4 Saturdays. You can opt into any one. And I don't know how they work it functionally. You register, pay for it, and that gives you access to the class. And only if you pay for it, you get a recording you have access to the recording. They also have some free classes. So they're running both models of free and paid content.
That's very clever.
They have staff too. We don't have any staff.
That's part of the problem.
An expert on staff who can lecture about, a million different topics that are, very interesting, and, they have value. People are willing to pay for.
Yeah, I think also some organizations are charging to Zooms like this, like their Zoom lecture series, they're charging to things like this. So if that's what Kathleen meant, then there are ways to do that. I automatically went to like YouTube or Instagram influencer, like that kind of monetizing. And I just looked it up. You have to have 30,000 users on YouTube. So I'm just for free yelling, please someone look at my content, not charging for it. But yeah, I think there are different ways that you could harness the internet to raise funds, programming, tours, things like that. I hope that answered Kathleen's question. Let's see, I am looking at Princeton United Methodist again, saying they like the idea of voice recorded PowerPoints. Listen, it's not the sexiest thing, but it certainly gets the job done. On YouTube, look at Ocean County Historical Society if you need any ideas. So Princeton United Methodist says, record on YouTube first and then post on Zoom, Facebook, and webpage. I have not used YouTube as a recording device. I record things either using my phone or making the recorded PowerPoint slides, or you could use even like iPhone Movie Maker, and then I post on YouTube, if that was the question. And again, please feel free to jump in if that did not.
So I would like to record from the computer. I've been using my phone or my iPad, but I would really like the setup here, and I'm wondering whether to use Zoom. I tried using Zoom and it works, but I don't know how easy that is to transfer. And I do want to take the recording that I'm going to put on Facebook and put it on my webpage also.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I'll speak to that quickly. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Emma. Yeah.
I was going to say, for these Zooms, we're using Zoom Meeting, which is actually free. In the early days of this program, we used Zoom Webinar, which costs more, and it was more like kind of a formal. We couldn't actually see all the attendees. It was more of a formal presentation, but we liked the meeting format. So this is free. And literally, as long as you remember to press record at the beginning, which I have written down on a piece of paper next to me, because it's easy to forget, with everyone coming on and stuff. As long as you press record, you can record it to your computer. And then for the first time ever, myself, I learned how to put it on YouTube because I wanted people in PNJ to be able to look at it afterwards. So I made a free YouTube account and I uploaded the video onto it, and you can kind of splice it around a little bit on YouTube. So it is possible, and you can do it all for free. But Zoom, then YouTube, and then you can also share that. Then you can share that YouTube link on Facebook. So it's a 1, 2, 3.
So it needs to go through YouTube, is what you're saying.
It goes a lot faster and better if you go through YouTube.
Okay, thanks.
Depending how good you are with your website, you could embed that video file directly into your website, but that's beyond
We're not there yet.
I don't know, whoever runs your website could absolutely do that for you. But if I'll screen share for a second and show you. So the Ocean County Historical Society, for example, I told you we started that YouTube channel, and there was interest in putting those videos on our website. Now let's see if I can share. But it was a little more complicated than we were prepared to do. And we do have, can you see my screen? Awesome.
Yeah.
We do have someone with whom we contract for website issues that we can't handle ourselves, but we were like, do they really need to live on there, or could we do this? So now let's see if I can find it. So now when you go to our website, we were able to enter the simple text, click here to see our YouTube channel. So now people will click there. And can you still see my screen? It takes them to the YouTube channel. So if that's a little more technically manageable for you, you could always do it that way. If you have the skills, now depending how your website is run, is it WordPress, what is it? You know, you could certainly embed it right in your site. Okay, so that's all of the questions from the chat box. Would anybody else like to unmute themselves and ask a question or share a piece of advice? Because I'm sure everybody here has some stories from the field, if you will, that they could share. Okay, Emily, anything?
Oh, sorry, I was gonna say Michael had a question in the chat, but I wasn't quite sure. Maybe you could clarify. Give examples of house museum interactions or interactions between house museums, or Michael, do you want to clarify that? I don't know. Okay. Maybe not. Okay. Just I saw that in the chat. Want to point it out.
Having interactions with the public. So I could quickly maybe pull up the, let's see. Let me get to the page of the Ocean County Historical Society, for example, just because they are a house museum, which was specifically the question there. So how are we interacting with the public? Pulling it up, and then I will screen share just real quick. Let's see. There we go. Okay, can you see the screen? Okay, so you can see what we've been doing is each Sunday for the past 7 or 8 weeks, we've been posting a new video, so you can see there. That's a way that we are interacting with the public. We just had our, we're reminding people here as I scroll down to go look at our new YouTube channel. Here we are advertising one of our new online Zoom lecture series. Again, we don't charge to attend those, but if you wanted to, you could set them up. So there was, excuse me, an entrance fee for people to get involved in that. This was another Zoom talk that we did. You know, so you could go through and show, there's the events tab there. So you would have all of the events that you've got. You could post an artifact of the week or a throwback Thursday photo, right? I tend to find that people really, really like photos, and I don't want to run away with the conversation. So Tara and Emily, would you agree that people are really usually kind of photos catch their eye?
I agree, yes. Even our biggest use is on Instagram. That's where we kind of find a lot of our interaction happens. And yeah, that's a completely photo-based platform. And I think it's just also kind of one of those fun things that it allows people to see your behind the scenes. It allows them to see the things that you don't get to see outside too much. You know, do you have some books that are in the house? Do you have interesting doorknobs that people are going to walk past that they haven't even thought of before? You know, but even things like, you know, in more normal times, like, are the Boy Scouts coming to clean up the leaves outside, and can you get a picture of them helping? So there's so many different photos that you can take. Don't just think about standing in front of the house and taking a picture straight on of the house. It's the details and things like that will really get people interacting.
Mm-hmm. And I would just add, again, I totally agree about photos, but I think with people also like kind of like voting or contests. I saw a great Instagram about an apartment building, and they were having different people in the apartment building share pictures of their apartments, and people could vote for like the prettiest decorated apartment, right? Everyone's obsessed with HGTV and decorations, and you know, and so I think that you could do something like, what's your favorite room in the house, right? Like in different pictures of the rooms in your historic house, and then people can vote. So that's another way to kind of engage people, or you know, show us your living room. Like, here's the living room at our house, kind of like a contest to engage. So photos are great. Mm-hmm.
Another example of public interactions that pops to mind to me is the Parker Homestead 1665, a historic farmhouse in Little Silver. Inevitably, whenever they post a photo from the archives of a person with the name, you will get genealogists coming out and commenting, this is so-and-so, and he is related to me by this. And then another person will say, yes, and he's related to me by this. And, you know, people start sharing their family tree. So yeah, just different kinds of interactions that I'm trying to provide examples of. One more question before we are out of time here again from Princeton United. What do you do when someone likes a post? Do you reach out to them and ask them to like the page? Do you send something to them? You know, what do you do? I know in Facebook, for example, it'll actually give you the option to automatically send them an invite. So when you click on likes and you look at who liked your page, if they have not already liked your page, right, they just like the post, but they haven't liked the page, there will be a little button that says invite, and it will send them a little via Facebook message that says, you know, do you want to like the Ocean County Historical Society's Facebook page? So Tara, any other thoughts on that?
I think that's a great way to make sure that they continue to see your items. I mean, when someone likes something, most of the time you can also just, you know, it means that they're interacting and they found you somehow, and hopefully they are going to keep following you, especially if they keep seeing your content pop up in places that they're looking. So part of it's also you have to rely on them, that they're going to make the effort to keep following along.
Okay, so we are officially out of time here. I think Emily has just a couple slides to show us. Thank you so much again to Tara for giving her time to engage in this conversation with us all today. There's Tara's contact info if anyone needs it. Next up on Q&A with PNJ, we will have Dr. Richard Veit. He is the interim dean of the Wayne D. McMurray School of Humanities and Social Sciences at Monmouth University, and he's going to be talking to us about preserving historic cemeteries. So timely as we come upon Halloween. Please, speaking of liking and following on social media, go find Preservation New Jersey on social media and get involved in the organization. They do a lot of great work outside of this lecture series, as you can see here. And that is that. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time. It was great chatting with you.
Thanks, Tara. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thanks, Melissa, for coordinating this.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
You.